Hi, thank you for joining us for another Triangle Downtown video. Today we are here at Cucciolo Terrazza interviewing Chef Alex Ricci, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his past, how he got here, a little bit about the restaurant, and a little bit about the food, and go from there. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Rich.
So tell us what your life was like growing up, where you're from, and kind of how did you develop your love for cooking?
Okay. So I grew up in Chicago. My father was a very Sicilian-driven man, and I think we followed the protocols of what you would think is a stereotypical Italian household. Every Sunday, my grandmother, she would have these big dinners, and the whole family would come, and that became just kind of a very normal way of life, for me, and it's something that I truly cherish. So growing up, my father was a bookie, and he also owned a couple of bars, and it was always my job to watch the grill, when the guys would come over for the games and stuff like that. And so it made me feel like I was a part of it. So that kind of really inspired me to be a chef. And then my mother also was a chef. She had 2 restaurants in Chicago, and I would go over there and do little prep work with her when I was 5-6 years old. So it's just something that I kind of grew up doing, So
you grew up right in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And you said one of the dishes on your menu came from
my grandmother. Yeah. So the polpette here, that was something that I would stand at her knees and watch her make all of the time. And that was my favorite thing to eat growing up. Probably not serving me very well right now, but
well, they are good. We had those during our profile here, and I think it took me 2 bites to eat both of them, so they're good.
Yeah, they're very large.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your career, kind of how, I know you started in Chicago, where you went from there, and then kind of what was your progression job-wise leading to here?
So when I was 14, we left Chicago, and my mother and I, we moved to Jacksonville Beach, Florida. So she knew a man named Ralph at the time. He owned a restaurant called Sunset Bar and Grill, and it was a marina-style restaurant right next to another location called Marker 32. And I had worked there through the summer. I was just a dishwasher, and a breakfast cook didn't show up, actually, and so Ralph came up to me, and he's like, "Your mom says you can cook eggs." I said, "Yeah, I can cook eggs." And he was like, "Can you make an omelet?" I said, "Yeah, I can make an omelet." So I made him an omelet, and he was like, "All right, you're going to be my omelet cook for this service." And I think we did 300 and something covers that day. It was insanely busy. And I did completely fine. And he goes, "All right, well, you're going to be my omelet cook for the summer." And my mom was like, "Oh, that's illegal." And I was like, "All right, well, I'm going to do it anyway." Right. And so I just cooked the entire summer as a breakfast cook. And then my first year of high school came up, and I was able to do what we do, block scheduling. So it's every other week I would be leaving to go to work. And so I just continued to do that until I was 17, working as a cook at that restaurant. And then when I was 17, I took a position at Ponte Vedra Inn and Club, which was a 5-diamond resort. So it was a step up, and I got to work under a chef named Herman Mueller, which was a phenomenally talented man, and another guy named Doug Melvin. And that was when fine dining really kind of clicked for me, and I was like, okay, this is something that I'm good at. I can go with this. And so I did, and I continued there for a couple of years, and then moved on to Ocean 60 with Danny and Ben Grishel, and worked my way into my first chef de cuisine position there. So it was that was the start of my career. I'm very fortunate for it because Danny Grishel was a hard ass. He really was, but if he didn't make some of the best food I'd ever seen in my life. And I was very fortunate to have him as a mentor, even though he gave me a really hard time. But every day he drilled me. He said, "Alex, with technique comes flavor." And it took me a number of years to really realize what he meant by that. And so, but that's something that I hold very close to my heart now. It's oh, that sour bastard was right.
He wanted you to do well.
Yeah.
Try hard, right?
Yeah, he did. And I asked him about that one time, and he was like, I give you the hardest time because you're the best person that's ever come into my kitchen. And I was like, oh, well, all right.
That's a big statement.
All right. So it took 4 years to get that out of him. But no. And then things progressed, and I ended up working for Levy Restaurant Group seasonally, doing the NFL like parties and stuff like that at Everbank Stadium back when it was Everbank in Jacksonville. And that led to a traveling position. And I traveled with them for a couple of years, and I had eventually come up to North Carolina to visit a buddy, and Giorgio Bakasha had, approached me with a position in Asheville, North Carolina for the Golden Fleece, and I was still, very young in my career, and I still am, I think, but he wanted to build this beautiful Greek concept in the Grove Park Inn in Asheville, so Giorgio, myself, and a girl named Kelly Goldcamp, through a checkbook, built that restaurant basically out of a Home Depot with this man named Michael McKinley. And it was a fantastic learning experience. And honestly, we made some of the most beautiful food that I've ever made in my whole life at that time. And it was Giorgio just gave me just such an influence into like the whimsical nature of cooking.
He's a cool guy.
As he does.
He really is.
And
he's good at finding talent.
Oh, he's one of one.
Yeah.
There is only one Giorgio.
That's true.
So, I worked with Giorgio for quite some time, and then, I'd come to Durham with him and worked a little stint at Parazad, and, then I had moved on. Started working with Mira and Echelon Hospitality with G. Patel for a while. And then after Mira had closed down, I had taken a position in Las Vegas and worked at Elia for some time. And, I just really started to miss Raleigh. And, I really kind of called this home. And so I decided to head back, and Cucciolo Terrazza was here. And so Jimmy and I just decided to make it a thing,
It's awesome. Welcome back. We're glad you're here. This
is
some of the best food I've had in a long time here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Really good.
Yeah.
So how would you describe your food, cuisine, and the atmosphere here for people that haven't been yet?
Well, I'd say in the beginning, we didn't want to focus on fine dining too much, but then I think the demographic and voice of North Hills just kind of turned it to what it is, so at first we weren't really well perceived, we had a lot of stigmas and things like that, people wanted us to have chicken parmesan and then, and then spaghetti and meatballs, but then, it's funny, it's like if we started producing those typical things, it was almost like it wasn't good enough. And so over time it just, I convinced Jimmy, I said, hey, let me go ahead and take this a step up, and let's go ahead and aim towards a more fine dining approach, and we're going to actually do things that my family had done growing up, and we focused a lot on wild game. We ate a lot of rabbit, a lot of boar, things like that, and as you do in those countries, it's not really a very big beef driven industry there. There's certain areas in Italy that we eat a lot of beef, but for the most part you're living off the land. So I wanted to kind of represent that here. And, Jimmy, he was just a little on the fence about it. He didn't know whether it was going to go, up or down, whether we did it. And I said, you know what, I'm going to call a couple of guys, who are hard hitters that can really come in and help me get this thing executed. So I called Kevin Ruiz, I called Mike McRae, and a couple other, really good chefs that I know. I said, hey, I got this restaurant. It's a beautiful space. The owner is an incredible guy. And I said, let's do some really, really classic Italian dishes that people have never seen before.
The real classics.
The real classics. Let's make food that's sold. It's going to be new again. And so they got really excited. And Mike McRae, anytime I've ever called that guy, he's just like, chef, if you need me, I'm there. So he came in and Kevin came in, and we just started basically tag teaming out these dishes, and it just evolved. And the very first thing that we created was a wild boar agnolotti, and it just, the second we tasted it, we were like, this is never leaving the menu. So it never, and it won't. It will never leave the menu. Yeah. So So I think if a diner is going to come here, just expect a semi-upscale experience, but we're not going to be pretentious with it. We're not going to treat it as like a Michelin star restaurant.
Like no white tablecloths.
No white tablecloths, no gloves. No. But we definitely want to still have the standard within the food.
Right.
So absolutely.
So a lot of your dishes that you have kind of have a little bit of modern interpretations, right? So they're old with a little bit of new.
Absolutely. Everything we're doing has some form of modern interpretation. We didn't really want to do things that you see on other menus, It's actually, I make it my business to not read other people's menus. I just don't. I feel like they kind of become redundant when we do that, and we should start to follow these trends. And so I told Kevin, I was like, I'm not going to even read your menu when he was working on Bendito. I was like, I'm not even going to read that, even though it's not even near the same flavor profiles. But I said, I just want to be completely original here. Like, I don't want anybody to say that they can have this somewhere else. So, yeah.
Yeah, one thing in particular, I like that the noodles, the pasta that you have, that you see put in front of you else except for
which one?
The one that's at Vidrio, the funky shaped one.
Oh, the ratatouille.
Yeah. So that's another example of just trying to be different, right?
Yeah.
So you make a lot of stuff. I mean, like a lot more than most people make in-house here, right? So what's a few of the things that you make in-house that people might not realize?
I mean, we do everything from the breads to the pizza doughs. I mean, I would say the mostarda. I mean, a lot of people will like pre-buy their mostardas and stuff like that. It's not something that we do. So, I mean, we're doing everything from the preserves to some of the vinegars, a lot of the oil infusions, predominantly all scratch, to be honest.
Yeah, so you do have an all scratch kitchen. I mean, 'cause a lot of people will either bring in the bread or the desserts or something. You just do it all.
Oh, no, we do it all here. Yeah. Short of tomato paste. I mean, that's probably like the one ingredient we're not making, but everything else is very scratch.
All right. Tell us just about just a couple of dishes that people might find that haven't been here before, and tell us about how often the menu changes.
Oh, well, the menu changes seasonally, and I'm the type of person that thinks about more like 6 seasons of food, just because the progression of produce is constantly changing throughout the season, so, we want to work with all of that. So you'll see a change 6-7 times in a year.
Right.
Now, that being said, like as far as staples, the polpette, like I said, those are something that I hold dear to me. So they'll be here at all times. The wild boar agnolotti will be here. The whole roasted snapper, whether it's this variation or the next, we will have a whole roasted snapper on the menu. And I think we're always going to have a very large cut of steak, whether that's a bistecca florentina or that right now we're running the costata. Which is just the bone and ribeye, but we're always going to have some large cut, and then you'll always find some game on the menu. So whether that's boar, I mean, right now I believe we have boar, elk, rabbit, and lamb on, even though I don't know if lamb is considered game, but yeah. So I mean,
it depends on where you catch it.
Yeah, I guess so. But yeah, there will always be some forms of wild game on the menu as well.
That's a lot of game.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly just my favorite way to cook, man. That's for me.
That boar was stupendous.
Thank you.
You told about the ones that remain constant. So, what did you miss the most about Raleigh when you moved away to?
Well, I'll say this: the temperature was a big deal when I was living in Vegas. I mean, it is hot, man. So I was like, oh, I miss the seasons of like it actually being cold and like the leaves changing. You don't really see much of that up there.
The leaves,
yeah. Well, I mean, if you go up in the mountains,
right.
But I wasn't in the mountain; I was in the valley. So. I miss the temperature. I miss the people. I really do love Vegas. Like, it was a phenomenal experience and also very validating for me as a chef to know that I could carry my weight with chefs that I had grown up reading about and stuff like that. So even get to meet Todd Harrington and like guys like that was a huge blessing for me. but I missed the people. I missed the atmosphere, and I think that a lot of people they underestimate the Carolinas and this area. I mean, the produce we have here is on a class that is worldly, So I think that's something to be said about this area, is that we work with some of the best products in the world, in my opinion. And so that was something I truly missed. In Vegas, unfortunately, like, everything is commodity. There's not many farms in the area. I mean, you do have fantastic beef. Like, there's beef everywhere, and it's the cost of it's much lower. But here, just the produce and the livestock, like, being handled with such care and things like that, it makes a world of difference, like, in your cooking, and it gives you an appreciation for what you're doing. So that was why when I came back here, I kind of just told myself, like, I'm going to take everything I learned from Vegas and I'm going to go as hard as I can in Raleigh again, because honestly, I just care about the food scene here so much.
It's grown a lot.
It has over the years that I've been cooking in it. It's boomed, and I'm glad to be a part of it. And I think at the end of the day, if you're going to be a chef now, like, you have to really care about the industry as a whole here. It's not about one's ego. It's about how are you going to be like a pillar, for this dining scene here now.
There's a lot of camaraderie between the chefs here. It's not like competitive like you'd think, like in New York or LA or something. I mean, most of the chefs I know here, like, almost everybody knows each other. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, you will find most of us in a group actually at the end of the night. It's whether it's at some bar or one of our friends' restaurants. We're always together. We're always talking about food. I think we had done the North Carolina Food and Beverage podcast a couple of months ago, and that was stated as well. And it was like, yeah, it's completely accurate. Like, we are all together, and we are all constantly talking about food.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I mean, if anybody ever wonders why our food is getting better, it's because we're up all night talking about it. So yeah.
Well, thanks for hanging out with us today. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man.
If you haven't been, you need to come check this place out and have dinner. Brunch is now open, right? Saturday and Sunday?
Yep.
And lunch is coming soon, I heard?
Coming soon, yeah. Okay. So probably another week out, but yeah, we will be open for lunch.
So then you're going to be here 18 hours a day, right?
Yeah. Well, that's getting better. That's getting better. I got a pretty good support team right now.
That's good. That's good, man. All right, I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Greg. I appreciate you.
All right.
All right.